Thomas Hale set 2 plates on the table. He did it every Christmas Eve. He had done it for 11 years. 1 plate for himself. 1 plate for Margaret. Even though Margaret had been gone for 6 of those years, the 2nd plate still went down first. That was the rule. That was the way she had always done it. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and butter. A small chicken sat in the oven. Outside, snow was falling in thick, slow sheets across the town of Millhaven, Colorado. The kind of snow that made the world go quiet. The kind of snow that made a man feel the silence more than usual. Thomas was 63 years old. His hands were wide and rough from 30 years of working construction. His hair had gone fully white sometime around the year Margaret got sick. He was not a tall man, but he had always been a solid one. People in town called him steady. His daughter, Claire, called him stubborn. Claire had called that afternoon. She had wanted him to drive 3 hours to spend Christmas with her family in Denver. He had said no. She had pushed. He had said no again. She had gone quiet in that way she had and then said, "Dad, you can't keep doing this to yourself." He had told her the roads were too icy. That was partly true. The real truth was simpler and harder to say out loud. He did not want to leave the house on Christmas Eve. This was where Margaret had lived. This was where her voice still seemed to echo faintly in the walls when the wind blew right. Leaving on Christmas felt like a betrayal he could not explain to anyone who had not loved someone the way he had loved her. So he stayed. He set 2 plates. He put the chicken in the oven. He sat in his old armchair by the front window and watched the snow fall. At 9 o'clock the power went out. The whole street went dark at once. Thomas sat still for a moment, then reached for the flashlight he kept on the side table. He was a practical man. He had candles in the drawer, a generator in the garage, and enough firewood stacked on the porch to last 2 weeks. Margaret had always laughed at how prepared he was. "You plan for disaster like it's a hobby," she used to say. He lit 3 candles and set them on the windowsill. The snow was still falling. Heavier now. It was almost 10 when he heard it. Not a sound exactly. More like a pressure. The kind of feeling you get before a lightning strike, when the air gets tight and electric and the hairs on your arm rise without reason. Thomas turned toward the window. The sky above the tree line was not dark anymore. Something was moving through the clouds. Something enormous. At first he thought it was a plane going down, some massive shadow descending at the wrong angle. But planes did not move the way this thing moved. Planes did not curve through the air like a living thing. Planes did not have wings that caught the snow and scattered it in spiraling bursts of white. Thomas stood up slowly. He pressed his hand to the cold glass and looked up. It was falling. Whatever it was falling fast and wrong, tilting sideways, one wing folding at an angle that looked broken. It disappeared behind the tree line at the edge of his property with a sound like a freight train hitting water. The ground shook once beneath his feet. A picture frame fell off the wall. The candles flickered hard but stayed lit. Thomas stood in the silence that followed. His heart was beating fast. His mind was already running through what he knew. Something had come down in the woods behind his house. Something big. Something alive, he thought, though he could not have said why he was already certain of that. Margaret's voice came to him then, the way it sometimes did. Not a ghost. Just a memory so clear it felt like sound. "Thomas Hale," she would have said, "you are not going to stand there." He looked at the dark woods. He picked up his flashlight, his coat, and his boots. He went to the door. The snow hit Thomas the moment he stepped off the porch. It was not gentle anymore. The wind had picked up since the crash, and it pushed against him hard, like it was trying to warn him back inside. He lowered his head and kept walking. His boots crunched through the fresh snow, past the woodpile, past the old fence Margaret had painted white 3 summers before she got sick, and into the tree line at the back of his property. The woods were dark and close. His flashlight cut a narrow beam through the falling snow. Pine branches drooped low under the weight of it. He moved carefully, watching his footing. The ground was uneven back here, full of roots and rocks he knew by memory but could not see clearly tonight. He heard it before he saw it. Breathing. Not small breathing. Not the quick, shallow breath of a deer or a fox. This was deep and slow and enormous, like the sound of a bellows in a furnace. Each exhale sent a cloud of steam rising up through the snow-covered branches ahead of him. Thomas stopped walking and held his flashlight steady. Then he saw the eye. It was gold. Bright gold, like a coin held up to firelight, with a vertical pupil that caught his beam and reflected it back at him. It was the size of a dinner plate. It blinked once, slowly, and did not look away. Thomas did not run. He was not sure why. Every reasonable part of his brain was telling him to turn around. But something held him in place. Maybe it was the sound of the breathing, which was not aggressive. It was labored, bent. The sound of something that was hurt and trying not to show it. He took one step forward. The flashlight swept wider and he finally saw the whole of it. She was massive. Easily 40 feet from her snout to the base of her tail, scaled in deep charcoal gray that shimmered faintly blue where the light caught it. One wing was folded tight against her body. The other was spread at a wrong angle against the snow, bent at the joint in a way that made Thomas's stomach tighten. He had seen broken things before. Broken beams, broken bones, broken men. He knew what broken looked like. Her right wing was broken. She was lying on her side against two fallen pines, which had snapped under her weight like matchsticks. Around her, the snow was melted in a wide circle from the heat her body was giving off. Steam rose from her scales in thin, curling wisps. Her tail moved once, slowly, cutting a shallow trench in the snow, and then went still. She was looking at him. He was looking at her. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then she spoke. The sound came from somewhere deep in her chest, low and resonant, like a church organ playing a single note. But it was words. Clear words in English, though shaped by a mouth that was not built for English. The consonants were soft. The vowels were wide and rounded. She said, "You should not be here." Thomas exhaled slowly. His breath fogged in the cold air. He looked at the broken wing. He looked at the gold eye watching him. He looked at the way her body was positioned, pressed hard against those fallen trees, unable to rise. "Neither should you," he said. Something shifted in her expression. He could not have explained how he read it. Dragons did not have human faces. But something in the angle of her jaw, the slight widening of that gold eye, told him the answer had surprised her. She said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, "I was supposed to arrive earlier." Thomas frowned. "Arrive where?" She closed her eye briefly. When she opened it again, the gold was dimmer. She was fading. Whatever strength had carried her this far was running low. He could see it the way he had seen it in Margaret near the end. That slow, quiet pulling inward. "There is a name," she said. "A human name. On a list I carry." Her voice dropped lower. "Thomas Hale." The flashlight shook slightly in his hand. He had not told her his name. He had not told her anything. He stood in the snow, in the dark, 11 years of Christmas Eves pressing down on his chest, and stared at the dying dragon who had come from the sky on the one night he had almost stayed inside. She knew his name. And she was running out of time to explain why. Thomas did not ask how she knew his name. Not yet. The practical part of his brain had already taken over, the same part that had kept him calm on job sites when scaffolding collapsed and men were screaming. That part of him looked at the situation clearly. A living creature was hurt and fading in the snow behind his house. Everything else could wait. "How bad is the wing?" he asked. She turned her head slowly toward the broken joint. The movement cost her. He could see it in the tightening of her jaw, the way her breathing stuttered for a moment before steadying again. "Bad enough," she said. "Can you move at all? Roll toward me? If I do, I will crush you. Not if I step back. I need to see the joint clearly." She watched him for a moment. That gold eye was steady but dim. Then, with a grinding effort that shook the ground and sent snow falling from the branches above, she shifted her body a few degrees toward him. The broken wing scraped across the snow. She made no sound, but her eyes squeezed shut for a long second. Thomas moved the flashlight carefully along the joint. The break was high up, near where the wing connected to the shoulder. Clean on one side, jagged on the other. The kind of fracture that needed to be stabilized before anything else, or movement would make it worse. He had seen the same thing in a man's collarbone once on a site in Denver. The principle was not so different. He needed something rigid. Something long. He looked at the fallen pines she had landed on. 2 of them were snapped clean, their trunks split and straight. The longest section was maybe 8 feet. Not enough on its own. But he had rope in the garage. He had the canvas straps he used for hauling lumber. He had a mind that had been solving structural problems for 30 years. "I'm going back to the house," he said. "I'll be 10 minutes. Her eye opened fully. Something moved across her expression that he was starting to learn to read. Surprise again. And underneath it, something more careful. Something that had been disappointed before and did not want to be again. "You are coming back," she said. It was not quite a question. "I said 10 minutes, Thomas told her. "I meant 10 minutes. He turned and walked back through the trees. He moved fast. Rope from the garage, canvas straps, the 2 longest spare planks from the stack he kept for fence repairs, his heavy work gloves, and the old wool blanket Margaret had kept folded on the chest at the foot of their bed for 20 years. He grabbed that last one without thinking about it too hard. He just knew the creature in the woods was cold, or at least losing heat faster than she should. He was back in 9 minutes. She was still there, still conscious. Her eye tracked him as he came through the tree line, and something in her posture shifted. A faint release of tension, as if she had been braced for him not to return. He got to work. He did not ask her permission for each step. He told her what he was doing as he did it, calmly and clearly, the way he used to talk to nervous workers on high scaffolding. Keep the voice steady. Keep the information simple. Let them know they are not alone. He secured the planks along the broken joint using the canvas straps, pulling each one firm but not tight enough to cut. She flinched once when he adjusted the angle of the wing. He stopped, waited, then continued. When the joint was as stable as he could make it, he stepped back and checked his work. It was not perfect, but it would hold through the night. Then he unfolded the wool blanket and laid it across the base of her neck, the only part of her he could reach without a ladder. It covered almost nothing. She was enormous, but he put it there anyway. She stared at it for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Lower. Rougher at the edges, like something in it had shifted loose. No one has ever done that, she said. Done what? Splinted a wing. Covered me, she said. As if I could feel cold. As if it mattered whether I was comfortable. Thomas looked at her steadily. Does it matter? She was quiet for a long time. Yes, she finally said. I did not know that until now. He pulled his coat tighter and sat down in the snow beside her. The wind had dropped. The woods were quiet. And somewhere in that stillness she began to tell him why she had come. But 3 words in, her gold eye flicked upward sharply. Above the trees, far up in the dark sky, something else was moving. And it was coming down fast. Thomas looked up. Through the gap in the trees he could see it. A shape in the sky, darker than the clouds around it, descending in a tight controlled spiral. Not falling the way she had fallen. This one was in full control. It moved with purpose and precision, wide wings cutting clean angles through the snowfall. Another dragon. Larger than her. Sora, Thomas said, using the name she had finally given him 20 minutes ago. Who is that? Her gold eye was locked on the sky. The dim light in it had changed. It was not fear exactly. It was something older than fear. The look of someone who knows what is coming and has already accepted it. My commander, she said quietly. Vale. He came to retrieve me. Retrieve you, Thomas repeated. Like your cargo. Like I am property that failed its mission. She exhaled slowly, steam rising thick into the cold air. I was sent to deliver a message to you, Thomas. I was late. I was damaged in the upper atmosphere. In Vale's eyes, I have brought shame to the order. What order? The DracoWar. We are assigned to humans. 1 dragon, 1 human for the duration of that human's life. We observe. We protect from a distance. We deliver warnings when the timeline requires it. She paused. We are not supposed to be seen. Thomas processed that quietly. 63 years of his life. Someone watching from a distance the whole time. And Margaret, he asked. Did she have one of you watching her too? Sora was silent for a moment. Her dragon's name was Kale. He died the night she did. It is rare. It happens when the bond runs too deep and the watcher cannot separate. Her voice was careful. Kale had watched Margaret for 51 years. Thomas looked down at the snow. Something moved through his chest that he did not have a word for. A grief and a strange comfort arriving at the same moment, pressed together so tightly he could not pull them apart. He did not have long to sit with it. Vale landed at the edge of the clearing with a force that shook the ground. He was slate black, enormous, his scales unmarked and his wings folding with military precision. His eyes were pale silver, cold as January ice. He looked at Sora the way a general looks at a soldier who has lost a battle. Then he looked at Thomas. Step away from her, human. Thomas did not step away. She has a stabilized fracture in the wing joint, he said. Moving her incorrectly will worsen it. I used 2 split pine trunks and canvas strapping. The binding needs to stay on for at least 3 days before any flight is attempted. Vale stared at him. The silver eyes were unreadable. You bound her wing. Someone had to. You should not have been able to approach her at all. She should have kept distance. She was hurt and alone in the snow on Christmas Eve, Thomas said. I wasn't going to walk back inside. A long silence followed. Snow fell between the 3 of them, soft and indifferent to the tension underneath it. Vale turned to Sora. You spoke to him. He spoke first, she said. And he came back. You told him about the order. He asked the right questions. She met the silver eyes steadily. And he covered me with a blanket veil. He went back to his house and he came back with rope and wood and a blanket because he did not want me to be cold. Tell me the last time anyone did that for one of us. The silence that followed was a different kind. Heavier. Thomas watched Vale's expression. Underneath all that military stillness, something was moving. He had seen the same thing in men who had held themselves rigid for too long. The moment just before something finally cracked. Kale, Vale said at last. The word came out low and stripped of everything that had been covering it. Kale was mine. Before he was assigned to Margaret. He was mine for 200 years. Thomas said nothing. He just listened. When he died, I was given a new assignment within the hour. There is no grief in the order. There is no time given for it. We continue. Vale's pale eyes dropped to the snow. We always continue. Thomas looked at this ancient, enormous, powerful creature standing in the dark woods and saw something he recognized completely. A man who had never been allowed to sit down and feel the weight of what he had lost. Sit down, Thomas said quietly. Vale looked at him sharply. I have a chicken in the oven, Thomas said. There are 2 plates on the table. There has always been 2 plates. He held the silver gaze steadily. Come inside. Both of you. The snow fell soft and slow around them. And for the first time in 200 years, Vale had no order to follow, no mission to complete, no rank to maintain. He only had this moment. This human. This unbearable, unexpected kindness. His head lowered slowly toward the snow. And Thomas Hale waited, the way he always did, with the patience of a man who understood that some things cannot be rushed. They could not fit inside the house. Thomas had known that before he said it, but he had said it anyway because the invitation mattered more than the logistics. Sora seemed to understand that. Vale took longer but he got there. In the end, Thomas brought the table outside. He was not a young man and the table was heavy oak, but he got it through the door and onto the porch one end at a time. He brought the chicken still warm. He brought the bread he had baked that morning. He brought Margaret's good candles, the ones she had saved for Christmas, and he lit them and set them in the center of the table where the wind could not reach them. He brought 3 plates. He set them down without explaining why there were 3 instead of 2. Sora watched him from the edge of the porch, her splinted wing held carefully still, her gold eyes soft in the candlelight. Vale stood further back in the yard, half in shadow, as if he had not yet decided whether he was allowed to be part of this. Thomas sat down and started to eat. After a moment, Sora lowered her great head to the porch rail and simply rested it there, close to the table, close to the candles, close to the warmth of the food and the man eating it quietly in the snow. She did not eat. She could not. But she stayed near. Vale did not come closer for a long time. Then, slowly, he crossed the yard and folded himself down beside the porch steps, his massive body curved around the base of it like a wall against the wind. He said nothing. He did not need to. Thomas refilled his plate and kept eating. At some point, without planning to, he started talking about Margaret. Small things at first. The way she burned toast every single morning and refused to admit it was burning until the smoke alarm went off. The way she laughed, which was always slightly too loud for the room and completely genuine. The way she had painted that back fence white in the summer heat and gotten more paint on herself than the wood and declared it her best work. Sora listened without interrupting. Vale listened too, his silver eyes half closed, his breathing slow and steady in the cold. Thomas talked for a long time. He did not cry. He had done his crying in the years right after. What came out now was something cleaner. Remembering without bleeding. Honoring without breaking. When he finally went quiet, Vale spoke. He talked about Kale. Not the way a commander reports a loss, but the way a person remembers someone they loved and did not have the right language to say so. 200 years of watching the same dragon choose the same kind of humans to guard. 200 years of Kale picking the ones who were quieter than the world thought they should be. The ones who set 2 plates. The ones who painted fences in the heat. The ones who waited. Thomas listened to every word. By the time Vale finished, the candles had burned low and the snow had stopped falling. The yard was perfectly still. The kind of still that only comes at the very end of Christmas Eve, when everything that was going to happen has happened and the world is simply resting. Thomas looked at the 3rd plate on the table. He had set it without thinking. The way he always set the second one. The way some habits run so deep they move through you without asking permission. He understood now why he had said it. Vale saw him looking at it. She would have liked this night, Vale said quietly. Thomas nodded. She would have talked to you for 3 hours and asked you everything you know and then told you that you worry too much. Sora made a low sound in her chest. It took Thomas a moment to realize it was laughter. He smiled. It reached his eyes. It had been a while since one had. The wing healed over the following weeks. Sora returned to her post. Vale went back to whatever commanders of ancient orders go back to. The DracoVale continued its work, unseen as it always had. But every Christmas Eve after that, Thomas found something on his porch before dawn. A single gold scale, left carefully by the door. Still warm to the touch even in the deepest cold. He kept every one of them in a small wooden box on the shelf beside Margaret's photograph. He never told Claire what they were. Some things he had learned do not need explaining. They only need to be kept. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it tonight. And drop your country below. This one was for all of you.